All right, we're talking to Bob Smilie about jury nullification, which is an important issue and one that I think is never talked about enough anymore. You can go to fija.org, Fully Informed Jury Association. And before the break, we were talking about this idea that there's such a thing as a victimless crime. And can you kind of explain why this is important to this entire conversation, a victim and a non-victim situation?
Sure. Many of the defendants facing trial in criminal courtrooms across America are no threat to their neighbors. They are harmless violators of victimless crime laws, victimless tax laws, regulatory laws, political protesters. These folks didn't hurt anybody. Some of them are growing marijuana just to treat their glaucoma or help one of their family members to fight cancer. These folks are not a harm in society. They didn't actually hurt anybody. And so we've got a lot of laws in the states that I believe that the state wants to make themselves a victim, and so they have a huge conviction factory. Let me say this. In the 1970s, we had a prison population of 200,000 people. Now, today, we have 2.3 million. Texas alone, we have 120 penitentiaries. It started out because of drug war, because of a victimless crime. Politicians painted people as criminals for smoking cannabis, and boom, we've got the largest prison population in the history of the world.
And then there's so many other things that tie into this. I mean, federal grant money for local police departments go by the number of arrests you make every year, so there's no real incentive to see declining crime numbers. And then you have crime labs in places like Alabama that don't even get paid unless the work results in a conviction. Doesn't that just kind of skew the system? Not only that, you have the judge, the officer, and the DA all getting a paycheck out of the same kitty. There's an obvious problem with this.
Yeah, and they're actually supposed to we're supposed to have checks and balances, and those checks and balances have been removed. We now see the DAs, the prosecution working with the judges and with the cops, and they all should be a check on one another. And there's a lot of money to be made in imprisoning folks. A lot of these folks that are in prisons today are making products for the state or for the Department of Defense. There's a lot of prisons out there that actually take care of all the landscaping needs and maid service needs of the U.S. bases here in the United States. It's the 13th Amendment freed the slaves, but if you're convicted of a crime, you are a slave to the state.
Wow. So let's go back to this jury nullification aspect. I would assume that most attorneys know about jury nullification, right?
No.
Sure.
So
sure they do.
Then why don't most...
against it.
Well, I was going to say, why don't defense attorneys say, hey, we're not going to take any plea. Let's take this to a jury trial. I'll start with an opening statement talking about jury nullification, and we'll get the jury to say this is ridiculous. Let's get out of here.
Well, they're not allowed to talk about jury nullification anymore. Matter of fact, for your listeners, if you are called to jury duty, the first rule of jury nullification is don't mention jury nullification. Don't even talk about it until the case is completely over with. What we need to do is, I would like to see, it's got to be on an individual basis with the prosecutors. People need to start going to talk to them, say, hey, I'll back you if you start being friendly towards jury nullification. Put this check back in on our system. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do with my DA in my county. She hasn't listened to me yet, but I believe I'm slowly winning her heart. So these guys, this is how they've been trained in their schools. When they're getting their law degrees, this is how it should be. A lot of them don't even realize the rich history we have with our founders and with our Supreme Court justices making rulings that that the laws are supposed to be put on trial. And, we need to individually go out and start really making this a daily conversation, especially amongst our politicians, and showing them that this is a viable way that we can regain our freedom.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's interesting, you mentioned that the jury's job is not only to determine if the defendant is guilty or innocent, but to determine if the law that is being used is justified or not. So how did that process actually work? Let's say 12 people are on a jury. They heard this interview today. What do they do? Well,
there's another aspect of informing jurors. They need to realize that there may be somebody in that courtroom that has something to gain, like maybe they're up for re-election. We're seeing that in Waco with a DA that was prosecuting bikers unfairly, and he was trying to use his case before the primaries to get some votes, and it backfired on him. He lost his primary and he's out. And so he has something to gain. Elected judges have something to gain. Paid snitches in a courtroom have something to gain because they're going to probably get off of their case. Even paid expert in the courtroom are making money, and they want to be called back. So there's a lot of folks in the courtroom that are actually making money. So we need to be pretty keen and ask the judge questions when we have questions to get those questions answered, and know this, that the state has unlimited resources. They can hire as many people as they need to investigate or hire people for witnesses, and the counsel that is given to the defendant is usually several $100s, and that counsel has 100 different defendants that he's working on, and he doesn't have much time for everybody or much money to do investigations or hire people, expert witnesses. He has really virtually no money. So the defendant's automatically at a disadvantage. And I think what the jurors need to do is recognize when a judge is taking control of the courtroom, recognize when they're leading people to a verdict, and realize that the defendant's attorneys aren't really working for them. And take a look at that law. And if it's not constitutional, if it's not just, if you feel it in your heart not to convict, don't. Because this is a life we're talking about. We really have no respect for life anymore in this country. And we're ruining that person's life, the spouse's life, the children's life, and generations. And so we really need to bring our conscience in. Even if someone did break the law, does the punishment actually fit the crime? So people need to, put the thinking caps on, have a little idea what they're supposed to do when in that courtroom, and go to fija.org and study up. I've got 3 courthouse outreaches going in Texas right now. So we hand people brochures and try to get them prepared at that moment. And it is working. People will come back out of the courthouse and say, I get it. I get it. We're supposed to go in there and judge the law, or I'm supposed to bring my conscience in here. Yeah. And people are getting this. It's pretty quick to get a clue of that we actually have a lot of power. Set people free. Well, let's take a break right there. We're up against another one. We'll have another segment right after this. Don't go anywhere, folks.
This is a public group. Here's another one. A backup public group. Here's another one. This is a group. The other 2 were like pages. this other one here. This is our other Year of Jubilee website link on Facebook, and I try to post lots of stuff there. Where did oh dear. Uh-oh. I gotta go back. You get the background here. I accidentally went off Josh's page. Oh, he's back online.
Bob Smilie from Fully Informed Jury Association, FIJA.org. Now, somebody might be thinking, well, wait a second, you mean to tell me if somebody's on trial and they were caught with a bag of marijuana, even though they were caught with it, the judge is going to tell us, you know, it's obviously beyond the shadow of a doubt that he was caught with it. It is illegal to have it, so this should be open and shut. I, as a juror, can say not guilty?
Yep.
Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. You know, the right of the people to be secure in their persons against unreasonable searches and seizures that shall not be violated. We need to really take that in consideration. That's why people need to realize that they need to know their Bill of Rights when those Bill of Rights are being violated by the government. Article 6, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution says it's a supremacy clause. So Marbury versus Madison said that any laws repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. So, yeah, we need to go in there and judge these laws and put these laws on trial. Because, you know, the human right that controls all other rights is the absolute ownership and management of your body. And without ownership of your body, how can you hold rights? You can't.
Right.
So, you know, we got away from the kings and the dictatorships with a great document called the U.S. Constitution. And we're getting away from the protection of our rights again. So we need to restore this. And that's why our founders made sure that we had knowledge and had the power and had the right to a trial by jury. Matter of fact, it's the most mentioned right that was violated, that was mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, and it's actually the most mentioned right in our Constitution.
And here we are, like you said, with 97% of federal cases, 95% of state cases not having that jury. The very thing that they wanted to protect so dearly, we don't use 97% of the time.
Oh, pathetic.
Correct.
That's sad. It's sick, actually. So
this is tyranny.
It is, because I remember when the state of Washington Supreme Court and declared that seatbelt laws are unconstitutional because there is no victim and they can't force you to protect